The year 2017. A man is cleaning out his attic. Old furniture, old papers, boxes that have not been opened in years. He pulls down one box. He brushes off the dust. He opens the lid. Inside, he finds a strange collection, a folded piece of brown paper, a length of old string, a small roll of white tape, and a faded evidence tag. The man stands very still. His great-great-grandfather had been a young police detective over 120 years ago in a small English town called Reading. And one case from his career had ended up here, in this box, the most shocking case he ever worked. A case that ended on the gallows. Somehow, he had taken a piece of the evidence home. He had placed it in a box, and there it had sat for 121 years. The brown paper in this man's hands had once been wrapped around the body of a baby. The white tape had been used to strangle her. This is the story of the woman who put her in the river, the most prolific child killer in the history of Britain. Her name was Amelia Dyer. March 31st, 1896. England. The small town of Cheltenham is frozen. Winter has not let go. The evening air is sharp. It cuts at the skin of anyone outside. Gas lamps flicker to life along the stone streets. Horse-drawn carriages rattle past. They carry tired passengers home. Men in straw hats walk quickly. Women hurry beside them in heavy wool coats. Their breath rises into the dusk like smoke. Far in the distance, the machines never stop. Factory chimneys push black smoke into the dark sky. This is the age of steam and steel. The Industrial Revolution is at its peak. Britain is changing faster than ever before. But on this evening, two women walk through the crowded streets. They notice nothing around them. One of them is named Amelia Dyer. The other is Evelina Marmon. She is 25 years old, and her life is about to break apart. Pressed against her chest is her newborn daughter. The baby is wrapped in soft linen, safe from the cold. She is only a few weeks old. Her name is Doris. The two women are walking to Cheltenham railway station. At the platform, Evelina hands her child to Amelia. She also gives her a small bundle of baby clothes and £10 in cash. In Victorian England, this is a fortune for a working woman. Today, it would be worth nearly £1,000. From this moment on, Amelia will care for little Doris. But Evelina cannot let go. On impulse, she climbs onto the train with them. She wants to hold her baby one more time. The train moves through the dark English countryside. Evelina feeds her daughter. She does not know it is the last time she ever will. At Gloucester, the next big stop, Amelia stands up. She speaks softly. She takes Doris into her arms again. Evelina is broken. She curses her life. She curses the world. But she lets go. There is one small comfort. Next week, Amelia has promised Evelina can visit her daughter. The visit will be at Amelia's home in the town of Reading. But Evelina will never see her daughter alive again, because Amelia is not going to Reading. She boards a different train. This one is going to Willesden. It is a small town near London. Her grown-up daughter Polly lives there. The night is deep when Amelia arrives. She steps off the train, carrying the baby. The streets are silent. Snow covers the trees and houses. To Amelia, the world looks sad. But perhaps, she thinks, it is only her imagination. Doris sleeps peacefully on her shoulder. Her daughter's house is old. The wooden walls are dark with age. Polly opens the door. She does not say a word. Amelia walks past her into a back room. The wooden floor groans under her feet. Doris wakes up. She blinks in the dim light of an oil lamp. Amelia places the baby in a cradle. For a long moment, she only watches. Doris looks up at her. The baby smiles. A toothless, gummy smile. A smile that should melt any heart. Then, Amelia's eyes move across the room. They stop on a small roll of white tape. It is the kind used to trim the edges of baby clothes. It sits on a pile of laundry at the foot of the bed. She picks it up. She walks back to the cradle. She wraps the tape around the baby's neck twice. And then she pulls. The baby's tiny body shakes. Her small hands fly up, a desperate, helpless plea. Her eyes go wide. A single, weak cry breaks the silence of the room. Tears run from the corners of her eyes. In seconds, it is over. Amelia lets go of the tape. The lifeless body of Doris Marmon lies in the cradle. Her eyes are still open. Her tiny hands are still raised, frozen in the final reach of a child who never had a chance. To understand how this could happen, we must go back. Back almost 60 years, to a small village called Pile Marsh, just outside the city of Bristol, in southwest England. The year is 1837. Queen Victoria has just taken the throne, and the British Empire is at the start of its greatest century. In a simple home in this quiet village lives a craftsman named Samuel Hobley, a maker of leather shoes, who shares his small life with his wife Sarah and their 4 children. And that year, Sarah gives birth to another daughter. They name her Amelia. For a time, the family is happy, but that happiness will not last. Sarah Hobley catches typhoid fever. The illness is brutal. It destroys her body, and slowly, it begins to destroy her mind. She becomes bedridden. She suffers from violent fits. Little Amelia grows up in this house. She learns to fear her mother's fits. She watches a loving woman turn into someone she does not know. The mother she needs no longer exists. But Amelia is not a simple village child. She is sharp. She is well taught. She loves to read. She especially loves poetry. In another life, she might have been someone gentle, someone kind. In 1841, when Amelia is 6, her younger sister Sarah Ann dies. 4 years later, Sarah Hobley gives birth to another girl. The parents are still grieving. They named the new baby Sarah Ann too, a replacement for the daughter they lost. Within months, that baby is also dead. Sarah Hobley's mind falls apart completely. Amelia's older brothers and sisters look away. Her father throws himself into his work. Inside the Pyle Marsh house, little Amelia is alone. She must care for her mother by herself. She must witness the fits. She must clean up after them. Then, in 1848, when Amelia is 11 years old, her mother dies. Sarah Hobley is gone. After her mother's death, 11-year-old Amelia is sent to live with an aunt, but she does not stay long. Soon, she finds work in a corset factory. She joins thousands of working women across Victorian England. Most of them spend their lives in cramped rooms sewing for low pay. Then, in 1859, when Amelia is 22, her father dies as well. Her brother takes over the family business. Amelia was never close to her brothers and sisters. She leaves home. She begins to live alone. It is during these years that she meets a man. His name is George Thomas. He is 59 years old. She is in her early 20s. In 1861, they marry. The age gap shocks people. To avoid the judgment, they lie on the marriage record. Amelia adds 6 years to her age. George subtracts 11 from his. The lie is the first of many. After her marriage, Amelia wants a profession of her own. She turns to a friend of her husband's, a woman named Ellen Dane. Ellen says she is a nurse, but Ellen Dane is not a nurse in any normal sense. She is what Victorian society quietly called a baby farmer. To understand what that means, you have to understand the time Amelia lived in. Victorian England was obsessed with being respectable, and it was cruel to any woman who broke its rules. An unmarried woman who became pregnant was punished. Her family often threw her out. The father of the child had no legal duty to help. The law simply did not require it. For these desperate women, there were two choices: raise the child alone, in poverty and shame, or pay someone else to take the child away. For a fee, a baby farmer would adopt the child. She would promise to raise it. She would ask no questions. In theory, it was a kind of mercy. In practice, it was a death trap. Most mothers, frightened of being discovered, never came back to check on their children. The babies disappeared into a shadow world. There was no law to protect them, no inspections, no records. Their lives hung by the thinnest thread, and Amelia Dyer was about to learn how much money that thread was worth. Amelia learned the trade from Ellen Dane. But soon, Ellen made plans to move to America. She lost interest in the business. Amelia, however, was just getting started. Advertisements began to appear in local newspapers. They read something like this: married couple, no children of their own, living in the countryside, wish to adopt a healthy child, premium of £10 sterling. It was a perfect lie. To anyone reading those words, the image was warm. A loving couple in the English countryside, a safe home, a new chance for a child. To desperate mothers, it sounded like salvation. To Amelia, it was a business. When mothers came to meet her, she did not use her real name. She called herself Mrs. Thomas, a respectable, married woman, quiet, trustworthy, kind. The performance was perfect. They came in their hundreds, young mothers, mostly poor, mostly unmarried, holding the babies they had just given birth to. They pressed the babies to their chests one last time. They wept. They cursed the world that had brought them to this moment. Then, with shaking hands, they passed their children to Amelia Dyer, along with the baby's small wardrobe and the cash. "You needn't worry," Amelia would say. Her voice was warm. "Your child will be safe with me. Your child will be happy." And the mothers believed her. Soon, Amelia's house was filled with babies. It should have been a place of noise. The cries, the laughter, the chaos of many small lives. Instead, an unnatural silence hung over the rooms. The first thing visitors noticed was the smell. A sharp, sweet, sickly odor clung to every surface. It was the smell of opium. Amelia drugged the babies. She used a popular Victorian medicine called Godfrey's cordial. The main ingredient was opium. People used it to calm crying children. Used in tiny doses, it worked. But Amelia did not use tiny doses. Cradle after cradle stood against the walls. From the doorway, they looked empty. But inside each one lay a child, drugged into stillness, too weak to even cry. Their tiny bodies could not handle the poison. Their organs began to fail, and one by one, they began to die. This was exactly what Amelia wanted. The money the mothers had paid her was meant for the children's care, but Amelia never spent it on them. The mothers who came to her were almost always poor, almost always alone, and almost always too frightened of shame to ever come looking for their children. Amelia was careful. She moved often, from town to town. She used different fake names: Mrs. Thomas, Mrs. Harding, Mrs. Stansfield, Mrs. Smith. Each new town, each new advertisement, each fresh start washed her trail away. Then, for a time, the work paused. Amelia became pregnant. She gave birth to a daughter of her own. For a while, she stepped away from the trade. But by then, she had already killed many babies, far more than anyone knew. The pause would not last long. In 1869, George Thomas died. Amelia returned to baby farming with new energy. The advertisements appeared in the papers once more. Mothers began to seek her out again. In 1872, she married for a second time, a man named William Dyer. With him, she had 2 more children, a daughter named Mary Ann, who everyone called Polly, and a son, William Samuel. But this time, something in Amelia had changed. The opium syrup, she decided, was costing her money. Why slowly poison the babies over days? Why feed them at all in the meantime? Why not just dispose of them as soon as they arrived? So she began to strangle them the moment they crossed her doorway. The years passed. The murders continued. In 1879, Amelia made a smart move. She wanted no one to question the deaths in her care, so she began bringing the small bodies to a local doctor. She asked him to sign death certificates. The deaths would look natural: crib death, illness, bad luck. It worked. For a while. But over time, the doctor grew suspicious. The death rate in Amelia Dyer's home was simply too high. Too many babies. Too many tiny coffins. He went to the police, and here, somehow, Amelia caught a break. Victorian police were not trained to recognize a serial killer. The very idea was new. They could not imagine a woman killing babies for money. So they did not charge her with murder. They charged her with neglect, with failing to care for the children in her custody. The court sentenced her to 6 months of hard labor. Victorian prisons were brutal places. By the time Amelia walked out, 6 months later, something inside her was broken. She left prison a half-mad woman. In the autumn of 1888, all of Britain stopped to read the news. In London, in a poor area called Whitechapel, a killer was at work. He attacked women in the streets at night. He cut their throats. He cut their bodies open. The newspapers were filled with the horror of it. Police could not catch him. He sent letters to the press. He taunted them. He had a name now. The newspapers had given him one. Jack the Ripper. He killed 5 women. His identity was never discovered. He vanished into the fog of Victorian London. More than 100 years later, the world still knows his name. Books are written about him. Films are made. Tours are sold. Every child has heard of Jack the Ripper. But here is the strange truth. At that exact same moment, in the same country, Amelia Dyer was killing 2. Not 5, not 50. By this point, her victims numbered in the hundreds. She had been killing for almost 20 years, and she would keep killing for nearly 10 more. Some say she even lived in Whitechapel for a time. Some have wondered if she could have been Jack the Ripper herself. There is no real evidence for this, but the question still haunts the case files. Why does the world remember the Ripper and not Amelia Dyer? Perhaps because his victims were grown women, killed in the street, with witnesses nearby. Hers were silent babies, killed behind closed doors, with no one to miss them. Or perhaps because Victorian England could not accept the truth. A male killer in the shadows was terrifying. But a kindly-looking, middle-aged woman killing babies for money? That was something the world refused to see. So while London hunted a ghost in Whitechapel, the most prolific killer in Britain quietly went back to work. Amelia sought treatment for her broken mind. She was placed in lunatic asylums more than once. But her addiction to alcohol and opium was now out of control. The treatments did little. Still, she could not stay away from the trade. In 1890, she returned to baby farming, and it nearly ended her. One day, a mother came back to visit her child. Amelia handed her a baby. The woman looked down. Something was wrong. She felt for a birthmark on the baby's waist that she knew well. The mark was not there. This was not her child. The truth was simple. Amelia had so many babies passing through her hands that she could no longer keep track of them. She somehow managed to find the right child and calm the mother down. But the fear that had risen in her chest in that moment would not leave. That same day, she took 2 full bottles of Godfrey's cordial, and she drank them down. It was a suicide attempt. It failed. Years of opium had built her tolerance so high that even a deadly dose could not kill her. It was not her first attempt. Earlier, she had tried to cut her own throat. That attempt had landed her in an asylum too. But every time, she came back to the work. Days after her suicide attempt, Amelia Dyer was back at it. This time, she made one more change. No more doctors. No more death certificates. No paper trail at all. From now on, she would dispose of the bodies herself. She moved constantly. New names, new towns. By the time anyone tried to find her, she was gone. And then came March 31st, 1896. The day Evelina Marmon handed over little Doris. The very next day, another woman arrived. She brought a 13-month-old boy named Harry Simmons. Amelia killed him the same way she had killed Doris the night before. She wrapped both small bodies in cloth. She placed heavy stones beside them so they would sink. She placed the whole bundle inside a carpet bag. Then, as her train carried her home, she opened the window and she heaved the bag into the dark waters of the River Thames. She had done this many times before. This time, the river would not keep her secret. 2 days earlier, on March 30th, a bargeman named Charles Humphreys was working on the River Thames, near Reading. He was steering his barge upstream when he saw something strange in the water. A small brown paper parcel floating. He pulled it aboard with a hook. He brought it ashore. His mate tore open the wet packaging. Paper, then sodden cloth. A tiny foot appeared. His mate ran into town to fetch the police. The case was opened. With no obvious clues, it was given to a young detective. His name was Detective Constable James Beatty Anderson of the Reading Borough Police. Anderson had almost nothing to go on. No witnesses, no suspects. Just a tiny body and the wet paper it had been wrapped in. So he started with the paper. He laid it out. He inspected every inch. And buried inside the cloth, he found something. A small, water-damaged luggage tag. The ink had bled. The letters were almost gone. Under a magnifying glass, Anderson worked at the marks for hours. Slowly, he reconstructed what had once been written there. two pieces of information emerged. The tag had been issued from Temple Meads railway station in Bristol, and on it, in handwriting almost erased by the river, was a name and an address. The name was Mrs. Thomas. The address was a small house near Reading. April 4th, 1896. Reading, England. In her small house near Kensington Road, Amelia Dyer sat waiting. A woman had written to her about leaving a baby in her care. She was supposed to arrive with the child today. At the agreed hour, the woman arrived, but she came alone, without the baby. She said she wanted to discuss the arrangement first. The two women talked. Terms were agreed. The woman promised to return tomorrow with the child, and then she left. Amelia, satisfied, went back inside. What she did not know was that a short distance down the street, Detective Anderson and his men were watching. The woman who had just left her doorstep was not a desperate mother at all. She was bait, sent by Anderson himself. Her job was to confirm that the address from the luggage tag was indeed the home of the killer. She had done her job. Moments later, there came another knock at the door. This time, when Amelia opened it, the police were on her doorstep. They tore the house apart. They found no babies, alive or dead, but the smell of death clung to the air, and the evidence was everywhere. Telegrams from frantic mothers, pawn tickets for baby clothes she had sold, receipts for newspaper advertisements that had drawn dozens of victims to her door. That day, Amelia Dyer and her son-in-law were both arrested. The Thames was searched again. 6 more tiny bodies were pulled from the water. Among them, little Doris Marmon and the 13-month-old boy, Harry Simmons. The first baby, the one Charles Humphreys had found, was identified as Helena Fry, just 11 days after she had handed her daughter over at Gloucester Station. Evelina Marmon stood over the remains of her child, and she identified her. Amelia signed a written confession. She insisted she had acted alone. Her children, her son-in-law, no one else had anything to do with it. There was no direct evidence against her son-in-law. He was released. Investigators estimated that, across 30 years of baby farming, Amelia Dyer had murdered more than 400 children. If true, that would make her the most prolific serial killer in British history, possibly in the history of the world. The trial was short. The jury took just 4.5 minutes to find her guilty. In the weeks that followed, Amelia sat in her prison cell and wrote. She filled 5 exercise notebooks with her confession. 5 small books, filled with her own neat handwriting, describing the things she had done. On May 22nd, 1896, the court sentenced her to death. On the morning of June 10th, 1896, at 9 o'clock, Amelia Dyer stood on the gallows at Newgate Prison in London. The executioner was a man named James Billington. He asked her, as was the custom, if she had any final words.
"I have nothing to say,"
she replied calmly. Then, the trap fell. The case made headlines across England. The press, hungry for a name to match her crimes, christened her the Ogress of Reading. In the streets of London, ballad sellers sang a new song about her. It went like this. The old baby farmer has been executed. It's quite time that she was put out of the way. She was a bad woman, it is not disputed. Not a word in her favor can anyone say. For years afterwards, in the town of Reading, mothers warned their misbehaving children with a single phrase. Old Mother Dyer will get you. She had become a real-life boogeyman, a monster used to frighten the young into good behavior. Her case shocked Parliament. New laws were passed. The Infant Life Protection Act gave authorities, for the first time, real power to inspect homes where children were kept for pay. The Young National Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children, the NSPCC, used her case to push for child protection across Britain. But the dark trade itself did not vanish overnight. 2 years after Amelia Dyer's death, in southwest England, at a quiet railway station in a town called Newton Abbot, workers were inspecting parked train carriages. They discovered an abandoned parcel. When they opened it, they found a 3-week-old baby girl, still alive. The investigation traced the parcel backwards. A widow named Jane Hill had paid £12 to a woman calling herself Mrs. Stewart. The deal was the same as always. Take the baby, ask no questions. Mrs. Stewart had collected the baby in Plymouth. She had boarded a train, and somewhere along the journey, she had simply left the child behind. Mrs. Stewart was never found, but many believed they already knew who she was. Polly Dyer, Amelia's own daughter. The Ogress of Reading was dead, but her shadow had not died with her. And there is one more chapter to this story. A chapter that ends in our own time. In the year 2017, more than 120 years after Amelia Dyer was hanged, a man in England was cleaning out his loft. He found an old box. Inside the box was a strange collection. Brown paper packaging, a piece of string, a length of white edging tape, and an evidence tag. He was the great-great-grandson of Detective Constable James Beatty Anderson, the young policeman who had solved the case. The items had been kept in the family for over a century. What he had found was the actual evidence used to convict Amelia Dyer. The very same paper that had wrapped little Helena Fry. The very same edging tape. The proof that had hanged the Ogress of Reading. The items are now in the Thames Valley Police Museum. A quiet reminder of what one woman did. And of all the babies whose names we will never know. In the same century, in the same country, Jack the Ripper killed 5 women in Whitechapel. The world has never forgotten him. Amelia Dyer killed 400 children. The world barely remembers her name. Perhaps now, you will.
In Reading town by the Thames, so grey, a woman took the babes away. With kindly words and a mother's smile, she wrote her letters full of guile. Bring me your child, the notice read, a loving home, a warm, soft bed. But the only bed those infants knew was the river deep where the cold mist grew. White tape she wound, so soft, so slight. She said she loved to watch the sight. 400 souls, or so they say, the Thames gave one back on an April day. Oh, mothers weep and fathers mourn for the little ones who'll not return. And the ogress swung on a June morning bell. From Newgate's yard she went to hell.